The rain in this city doesn't wash anything away. It just makes the grime slicker, harder to hold on to. I stepped into the room, and the smell hit me first. Not the copper tang of blood you expect, but the dry, choking scent of chalk dust and ozone. It was 3 a.m. on a Tuesday, an hour when honest men are asleep and the rest of us are trying to forget why we're awake. The address was a brownstone near the University District, the home of one Professor Elijah Wright. He was sprawled on the floor, not in the chaos of a struggle, but positioned. His limbs were straightened, aligned with the parquet flooring like he was a variable in a geometry problem that had finally been solved. I'm calling this case 0115, the equation of life. It sounds poetic. It wasn't. It was cold, calculated, and devoid of any rhyme or reason that a sane mind could grasp. I'm the one who wrote it down, the one who had to look at the photos when the flashbulbs died down. The reason I was standing over a dead mathematician wasn't civic duty. It was Camilla Hughes. She had walked into my office 6 hours earlier, bringing the scent of expensive perfume and imminent disaster into a room that usually smells of stale tobacco and regret. She didn't cry. Women like Camilla don't cry, they negotiate. She was Elijah's fiancée, or so she claimed, though the ring on her finger looked new enough to still have the receipt in her purse. She had eyes like shattered glass, sharp, dangerous, and hiding a hell of a lot. "He's in trouble," she'd said, sliding a thick envelope across my desk. "He thinks he's found something, a pattern, and someone wants to subtract him from it. My door doesn't open for virtue. It opens for the envelope. I took the cash. I took the job. I was too late." The official police, led by Detective Jackson Lewis, a man who couldn't find a bowling ball in a bathtub, were already calling it a robbery gone wrong. They pointed to the overturned bookshelf, the smashed lamp, but they weren't looking at the shadows. I was. I knelt beside Elijah. His watch was smashed, stopped exactly at 11:11. Not an accident. And there, scrawled in the thin layer of dust under his desk, was a symbol, a minus sign. This wasn't a robbery. Nothing of value was taken except the man's breath. The chaos in the room was staged, a sloppy attempt to cover up a precise execution. The killer didn't want money. They wanted to balance a ledger. Camilla had told me Elijah was working on the equation of life, a grandiose mathematical theory that predicted human behavior. It sounded like nonsense to me, but looking at the body, I realized someone took it seriously. The cops see a corpse in a crime scene. I see a narrative. I see the silence where a scream should be. My job isn't to arrest people. That's for the guys with the pensions. My job is to dig into the filth until I find the one thing that doesn't fit, the one spark of truth that burns your fingers when you touch it. You're about to hear the version without the police tape. The version where the bad guys don't always wear masks, and the good guys, well, I haven't met one of those in years. Listen closely to the shadows. That's where I work. I poured 3 fingers of bourbon into a glass that hasn't been properly washed since the last administration. The cheap stuff. It burns the throat enough to distract you from the stench of lies. Camilla Hughes was lying. I knew it the moment she told me she loved him. You don't pay a private eye in cash if you're grieving. You pay in cash when you're afraid of what comes next. I sat in my office, the neon sign from the bar across the street blinking a rhythmic red light across the files. I had Elijah Wright's notebook. I'd lifted it from the scene while Lewis was busy shouting at a rookie. The police report would say robbery, but the notebook screamed obsession. The pages were filled with names, dates, and times. And next to each name, a variable. Then, a line crossed through them, subtracted. This brings me to the hard-boiled truth. People lie, evidence doesn't, but you have to know how to read it. The police saw a broken watch. I saw a timestamp. I saw that Elijah wasn't the first. I traced the names in the book. Lucas Miller, an actuary found dead 3 weeks ago. Stella Roberts, a statistics student, vanished a month before that. The police treated them as isolated incidents, a heart attack, a runaway. But the notebook connected them. They were part of the data set. I hit the streets. I needed to know who else knew about the equation. I went to the university, tracked down Elijah's rival, a man named Sebastian Ross. He was holding court in a dim faculty lounge, smelling of tweed and arrogance. He laughed when I mentioned the murder. Elijah was a dreamer, Sebastian sneered, swirling his brandy. He thought he could quantify the soul. He thought if you removed the chaotic elements, the outliers, you could create a perfect society. Outliers? I asked, feeling the cold weight of my gun in its holster. People who don't fit the curve, Sebastian said. He called them remainders. That's when it clicked. The broken watch, the minus sign, the neat arrangement of the body. Elijah wasn't the victim of his research. He was the author of it. But he had a partner, someone who did the physical work while he crunched the numbers. I went back to the client, Camilla. I looked into her background, really looked this time, past the money and the sob story. She wasn't just a fiancée. She was Camilla Bennett, a former prodigy kicked out of the doctoral program for unethical experimentation. The psychology of desperation is a funny thing. It makes you think you can control the uncontrollable. Elijah and Camilla weren't trying to solve a crime. They were trying to solve people. They were pruning the garden. But somewhere along the line, Elijah got cold feet. He wanted to stop the subtractions. He became an outlier. I drove back to Elijah's brownstone. Camilla was there, tearing the place apart, looking for the notebook. When I walked in, she didn't scream. She just pulled a small, pearl-handled pistol from her purse. It looked like a toy, but it would put a hole in you just the same. "You have the data," she said, her voice trembling, not with fear, but with excitement. "Give it to me. We're so close to the solution." "The solution is a pile of bodies, Camilla," I said, leaning against the doorframe, exhausted. "You didn't hire me to find his killer. You hired me to find the book before the cops did. You killed him because he wanted to quit. The truth is ugly. It's not a shining light. It's a dirty, jagged rock that smashes your illusions. You find it, and usually it leaves you poorer, drunker, and with another enemy staring down the barrel of a gun. The sound of a gunshot in a small room is deafening. It stays in your ears for days, a high-pitched ring that reminds you how close you came to being past tense." Camilla missed. I didn't aim to kill. I don't get paid enough for the paperwork. But I put a round into the wall next to her head, close enough to shatter her resolve along with the plaster. She dropped the gun. The equation was over. The police arrived 10 minutes later. Detective Lewis took the credit, of course. I handed him the notebook and the gun, and he looked at me like I was a pest he couldn't legally exterminate. I watched them handcuff Camilla Hughes. She wasn't crying. She was muttering numbers under her breath, calculating the probability of a jury trial versus a plea deal. Let's analyze the mechanics here. The modus operandi was intellectual vanity masquerading as science. Camilla and Elijah believed they were gods, deciding who was necessary for the grand sum of humanity and who was a remainder to be discarded. It's the oldest motivation in the book, hubris. They didn't kill out of passion or greed, but out of a cold, detached desire for order. It reminds me of the old pulp stories, the mad scientist and the femme fatale. Only this time, the laboratory was the city streets, and the rats were people. The legacy of a case like this? A few headlines, a tenure track opening at the university, and a check that cleared this morning. Camilla will plead insanity, and she'll probably get it. Because who in their right mind thinks murder is a math problem? But the city doesn't change. You remove one predator, and the ecosystem just shifts to fill the void. The streets are still wet, the nights are still long, and there's always someone else thinking they can outsmart the devil. Telling you this story, it's like lighting a match in a flooded basement. It's a brief flare of light, a moment of clarity, and then the darkness rushes back in. I need to get this off my chest so I can sleep, or at least pass out without seeing Elijah's dead, calculated stare. I share the grime so I don't drown in it. But the silence is already breaking. There's a new envelope under my door. No name, just a return address in a neighborhood where the streetlights are shot out. The phone is going to ring any second. The next riddle is waiting around the corner, wearing a different face but carrying the same scent of trouble. So, here's the deal. To keep this office open, and to ensure I'm the one going down into the sewers so you don't have to, I need you to keep the channel open. Subscribe. Share the misery. The night is only just beginning and this bottle is empty. That's enough talk. Turn off the lights. Close the door on your way out. I have a glass to refill and a demon to drown.